Hello, everyone. This is Rob Ryan at Twining, and I'd like to welcome you to the third episode of Twining Building Connections. And today I've got a huge privilege of talking to a gentleman whose firm and whose activities I've admired for a very long time. His name is Dr. Kit Miyamoto, and he is the global CEO of Miyamoto International. And while Miyamoto does the things that structural engineers are typically known to do, designing high rises, designing campuses, things of that nature. Miyamoto International has a really strong specialty in fundamentally things revolving around disasters. And so you'll see Dr. Miyamoto in Haiti. You'll see him I think most recently, he was in Thailand after the Myanmar earthquake a few weeks ago. And Miyamoto International is a very large firm. If I go to their website, I'll see that they have about 1,000 people working for the firm and 12 offices in the United States, 24 offices in other countries, basically worldwide. And they have a really interesting map on their website that shows the layout of some of their projects and offices with respect to what's called the Ring of Fire, which is basically where tectonic plates meet and are extremely likely to result in strong earthquakes. So with that introduction, I would like to welcome Dr. Miyamoto and ask you first off a little bit about your history, how you came to be a structural engineer. I noted that Miyamoto International is older than you are, or at least it looks that way to me. And so I'm suspecting maybe your father or someone founded it. But if you could give us a little bit of history of your firm and of yourself, it would be great.
Sure. Thank you, Rob, and thank you so much to invite me to be here. I think this is great. Well, I I was born in Japan, in Tokyo, and after I graduated from high school, I decided to play football for Dallas Cowboys. It didn't quite work out, okay? But anyway, so I went to college in the U.S. because I got to be a U.S. college student, play something, right? And But unfortunately, I blew my knee, so that was in my football career per se. So my plan B was a structural engineer. So that's how I become a structural engineer, actually.
I see.
Yep.
And so was the firm founded,
Mm.
I guess, before you became a structural engineer? So is
Yeah.
that your father or?
No, 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 no. It's actually I joined this company, small company in Sacramento, California called Marshall and Associates. Okay,
Ah,
so
okay,
back
I
in
see.
1990s, yeah. And John Schaefer decided to retire in 1997, and he asked me to go over the company. So that's what I did. But it's a small company there, we're maybe like a five, seven people there.
Hmm.
And but we are, respected. We did a whole bunch of like small schools and commercial buildings and stuff like
Hmm.
that. And but after that, we just evolved. We started doing the very innovative stuff. Even now, as we use seismic energy dissipation devices for the buildings and the bridges and stuff like that. So back then, no one was doing anything like that. So we're one of
I
our
see.
first engineers in California started using devices like that for both existing and new construction. So that's how we can start expanding from a Sacramento to LA in the early 2000 to Orange County, San Diego, San Francisco, throughout the states now.
I see. And then it's we actually have worked with your firm a couple times in the past. Even in a
Yep.
project I personally was involved in doing some condition assessments for
Mhm.
actually a theater in Riverside. But
Yeah.
how did you get involved in this really broad scope of
Yeah.
disaster relief from an engineering point of view?
Yeah. So we are fundamentally structural engineers. That's what we do. In California, we
Hmm.
have 10 different offices here, throughout the state. And essentially, we do normal structural engineering,
Yeah,
schools and hospitals and commercial buildings and the high-rise buildings, the bridges, stuff like that. And but we got it involved this in a whole international disaster, well, not only international, but domestic international disaster condition situations in around 2008 2008 or so. That's when actually 2008 there's a Sichuan earthquake,
Uh-huh.
and I went there personally because it was a big earthquake, killed a whole bunch of people. But what really triggered me was that every city I went, there's a large schools, could be elementary or high school or middle schools, big buildings, talking about 3, 5, 7, 8 story buildings. And I know sometimes there's 1,000 students in there. Many cases, those schools completely collapsed. I know I
Uh-huh.
was on one site, which I know killed about 2,000 students, no survivor.
Wow. Yeah.
And because just the way they built back then was just not meeting any earthquake standard or thoughts about it in the Sichuan, China. I know it changed quite a bit since that. But that really motivated us to, you know what, sure, we can do great engineering in California and the US, but why don't we just share our knowledge and experiences globally? So that's how that's got motivate us to kind of get into this international components of it. So we changed our company mission and vision around 2009, which is we just we make the world better, safer place, and save lives and impact the economy. So these kind of a branding or kind of our purpose statements we built back then.
Uh-huh.
So we kind of prepare for that kind of event. Then in 2010, Haiti earthquake happened.
Yeah.
That earthquake killed about 300,000 people. It was a huge chaos. About 10,000 international agencies went down there, and no one knew what to do. But we basically come to conclusion as well, simple thing. If there's big earthquake, big damage, big disasters, what you got to do? Well, you define the damage is. We call damage assessments. That's something pretty normal we do in California, but that's not something what's not known to do for international agencies after large earthquake events like that. So
I
we set
see.
up the so we set up a protocol, and we didn't do it ourselves. That was actually made us very different. We actually hired, trained about 700 Haitian engineers
I see.
and equipped them to do damage assessment throughout the whole country. So that teams assess the around the 420,000 buildings throughout the country and tag every single building, red for dangerous and yellow for damaged and green, safe to occupied.
Uh-huh.
Paint it throughout the whole country. So that program became really famous, obviously. And that's how we got to know this so international components like that. So since the Haiti, yes, every single disaster happens, we called upon to do things like that, from like as you mentioned, from Bangkok to Myanmar to Turkey to Afghanistan to just throughout. But today, I personally spend a lot of time here in LA. I live in Topanga, and LA fire in this early this year stopped
Yes.
essentially about 5 kilometers from my house. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And our
Wow.
community Topanga lost 60 houses. Canyon before that is the Palisades, obviously almost all gone, and
Hmm.
Altadena, it just unbelievable sites going on. So we use our know-how of that massive disaster reconstruction, you know, approach. So not, to basically gather the communities to reconstruction components. So that's we I spend most of the time here.
I see. I'm curious to know. I've got kind of two questions revolving around the international component.
Sure.
The first is I'm guessing the answer will be yes, but I'd be very interested to know if I'm right or wrong. Are you generally welcomed by the host governments to these areas, or is there some kind of like resentment of, we've got this, we don't need outside help and that type of sentiment?
Well, depends on how you approach it. I think
Huh?
many international companies or agencies, even nonprofit, show up in places like that, and
Yeah.
people don't really care about it that much. And it depends on how you go about it. I think being a kind of business actually helps because we have no business, right? We have no motivation or political influence or anything like that. You know,
Right. Right.
so some of the international agency being seen like that sometimes, but we're not. Two, we localize really quickly. Like for example, Ukraine and like the last couple of years, we had almost 100 engineers on the ground. Out of 100, 99, they're Ukrainian engineers. Just we had one international was
I
there.
see.
So we become localized really fast.
Ah, that makes
So
good sense. Sure.
yeah, so government see us as not an international company. They see us a local company with some international capacity attached to it. So that's our approach for every single country we go. There's just no exceptions, you know.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that makes very, very good sense. And then the other question I had about that is, um, in the event of a large scale disaster, let's just take Myanmar just for example, just because it was so recent. What are
Mhm.
the logistics involved for your firm in preparing, getting ready to go, getting there, boots on the ground, and the first kind of things you do, and what it is that you need in order to support the activities that you engage in?
Now the thing's much easier than it used to. Like when we
Uh-huh.
had the first time in Haiti, 15 years ago, no one knew about us, right? And we didn't know much about the whole international system works and disaster system, things works. But now we are different. We're known. So before we go there, the UN agencies essentially they contracted
Oh, I
with
see.
us to deploy. I mean, it used to be USAID, done a lot.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, USAID is gone now. So,
Yeah.
but the UN agencies, the World Bank, Japanese government, they approach us to basically just, work with them. And Myanmar's case is very different because politically very, how to say, secluded,
Hmm. Yeah.
and so they don't really welcome the many internationalists neither. But however, we have a network of engineers. We worked in the Myanmar for many years actually prior to this. All the things happened, before even the government changed. And so we had a network. We have a network of engineers there. So only thing we have to do is tap into a network of engineers, and also that we done a lot of remote assessments. So we basically provide that remotely training and provide all the assessment tools. We not only do damage assessment, we do repair
Uh-huh.
assessments and the training of masons or contractors or engineers on the field, stuff like that. So we just remotely equip them. We send one of our one engineer internationally to just be on the site for like a few days, but that's about it really. So it was completely remote, but it's a locally complete driven approach,
Uh-huh.
you know, and that's something that I believe that people really appreciate that because if you bring in a whole bunch of international engineers, well, we hire international engineers, but if you hire the local engineers, the money stay there. You
Yeah,
provide the jobs, that's very important
exactly.
because
Yeah.
after disaster happens, people lose jobs. There's nothing there. So therefore, providing jobs like that is extremely critical. So that's the one of I think our strength. Just we are able to expand that local capacity and talents and train them really quickly. I mean, we done same thing in Afghanistan. There was an earthquake in 2023 at the time, and you know, sorry about the dog.
That's okay. I'm a dog guy, so that's
All
fine.
right. Yeah, and I mean, that at the time, the IOM, one of the international agencies in the USA, they kind of thought about maybe we should they engage us to go there, but their question is, hey, you guys never been to Afghanistan, how you can do things,
Uh-huh.
they said, no, we know how to do it, but they don't really. But say, yeah, sure, right, the other place, not Afghanistan. But that's not a problem. Actually, a different UN agency actually engaged us, World Bank actually, and I mean, we can just activate engineers on the ground. And I was there quite a bit too, by the way. I spent quite a bit of time there. And
Hmm.
it was a southeastern corner of Afghanistan. It's extremely fragile area. It's a Pakistan border. That's
Yeah.
where that kind of Taliban is origin from.
Yeah.
Sure, it's maybe, some say it's controversial to be out there, but to us, we just follow humanitarian principles. It doesn't matter what countries and what affiliation, what's not. If the village is broken, we go, we fix them,
Hmm.
you know?
So when
So,
so I would imagine, I'm just speculating that you develop a strong relationship with these groups of local engineers, and
mhm.
perhaps they might consult with you if something comes up that with which they're not familiar, or hey, can you provide a little bit of advice for us in
Yeah,
this particular circumstance? Is that a fair assessment?
well, yeah, most definitely. And
Yeah.
Afghanistan, I think actually there was probably We had maybe half dozen international engineers deployed into that. Because it was a massive scale, thousands of engineers be hired. And
Uh-huh.
we trained thousands of masons. It's a lot about training components of it, of the reconstruct their indigenous, vernacular architecture. It's not made of concrete or steel or wood, made of clay, actually.
Yeah.
So we identify the strength and what some of them we notice the clay structures perform really well in a major
Oh,
seismic this
huh.
event. It's a lot. I mean, just think about it. People built in that way for thousands of years,
True that.
and so they can learn from those mistaken errors. And actually, some of the construction is pretty amazing. They're made of clay, but it's about 2 feet thick and 20 feet tall. It's a huge, just like massive construction. But
Uh-huh.
what happened is what we call rocking mechanism. It just rocks back and forth. So it's absorbed energy. It's actually made of a whole bunch of little blocks like this, just wall itself.
Right. I see.
So it's
Uh-huh.
absorbed the energy really well. So yeah, so if they do right, done right, following the so-called ancient knowledge, it perform well. If they shortcut, it doesn't because clay is very, how do I say, fragile. If they're
Yeah.
exposed to water, it melts actually. So what I mean, so you have
Uh-huh.
to have the right treatment. You got to have the right foundation systems and the right caps. That things like that really important.
Sure.
So we essentially capture the sense of that so-called wisdom from ancients, and we transfer knowledge to the thousands of peoples out there and the villagers. And
I see.
yeah, it was actually very good program. Actually, we worked with IOM. That's one of the international organization as part of a UN agency, and they provide direct funding to the villagers. And before they get money, we train them, and they have to follow the protocols we set up.
I
They get
see.
friendship money essentially if they do right. So it was not only creating that jobs and the capacity and knowledge, not only for just building this particular building or house, but generations to come. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, on a much different scale, I guess I would say, I have to ask, you had mentioned that you were actually in Thailand, and I know that the State Audit Office building there's videos all over the
Yeah.
place of the collapse of that building that was under construction. Was that part of the reason why you were in Thailand?
Oh yeah. I mean, the Bangkok is very advanced place. I mean, you're
Yeah.
talking about probably more 50-story buildings than LA or San Francisco combined. And a very rich city. But issue they had is that they have a very deep soil, about 800 meters thick, but it's very
Oh,
soft
yeah. Okay. Uh-huh.
sedimentation. So this is a earthquake almost 1,000 kilometers away in the Myanmar, magnitude 7.7. But long distance, soft soil, high-rise buildings, you can imagine, kind of like a
Mm-hmm.
jello. It's excites a lot, and you've got 50-story building sits in there. It's obviously going to excite more. So
Uh-huh.
that got tremendous amount of a resonance effect, which never been captured by the code. So that's why that brand new 35-story building collapsed, and also many buildings being damaged. So it
Uh-huh.
was a big issue. It is a big issue for this many buildings kind of compromised or has done has not been considered not considered to understand this whole soft soil soft soil effect.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually we using this visco stamping devices to create
Uh-huh.
this reduce emotions and stuff like that. So that's something that we working with many developers and the governments there to essentially provide the technical solutions to it.
I
So
see. I see.
it's definitely more high tech than the villages in a clay made house in Afghanistan. But yeah, we do all
Yeah, those
gamma.
those are opposite ends of the spectrum,
Yeah,
so to
yeah,
speak.
it
But
is. It
but
is. Yeah,
but
skyscrapers.
physical forces are physical forces.
Yeah. Actually,
Whether
sometimes the clay house are more difficult. I mean, that particular Afghanistan thing, and we actually brought in that the clay expert from France, from all those places, have him to test it for
oh,
the
is that right?
clay
Wow.
composition. Oh, yeah. And we did a whole
Huh.
non-linear modeling of this simulation of a clay house and how it actually performs, certain intensity, accelerations and stuff like that.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
So in your life these days, so to speak, how does it divide out between things like, actual, I mean, I'm suspecting you don't do a lot of sitting around at a computer keyboard running structural models of buildings, but rather take a more high level view. But how much of your day-to-day activities revolve around engineering versus kind of the logistics and making sure that the right people are in the right places at the right times for what your firm does?
Well, it still depends. Like LA fire reconstruction, I pretty much involved as the project, management essentially. And obviously we have a team of people
Yeah,
working with me to doing this
sure.
thing. But my daily agenda is I pretty much talking to individual homeowners at least half of my time every day, because it's a reconstruction in after disaster in a US is very different, obviously, from international components, right? International components we get big funding from you know, World Bank or UN agencies or US government or
Yeah.
stuff like that happens, and then we just do massive scale. But here it's different. Here's that obviously each household do get the insurance and spend the money wisely to reconstruct their house as fast as possible. That's the whole
Uh-huh.
thing. So after this fire, we lost 12,000 houses here in LA.
Yeah. Yep.
So, but if you do one by one, become really expensive. Have to kind of pool houses to doing it. That much more faster and efficient for constructions and engineering, everything
Hmm.
about it, right? So it's a big project management essentially exercise.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
hired obviously part of our team, we've got contractors, architects, geotechnical, civil engineers, and obviously with structural engineering, but we act as a basically program coordinators, program manager
Hmm.
to make sure things
I
get
see.
built fast, because that's what most people want, by the way. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh yeah, I mean it's a really horrible disaster here. I mean, almost everyone is uninsured, and almost everyone want to build back there, by the way. And many are very elder people living places. I notice 70s and 80s, and they pretty much lost everything. That's what they got.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's not like they can just sell the lot and move out somewhere. It's not like this is their life. There's a place. So they want to rebuild. So to do that, you have to be very scheduled, time, cost efficient to get things done. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a basically some kind of formula we use in anywhere, but it's just that here's a much more individualized. I
Yeah.
got
Oh,
no
yeah.
like probably I got no probably hundreds of man, I don't know, man, 50 to 100 families. I know details about each of them. So yeah, answer your question. What I do now, I talk to families in LA fire. That's what I do
I
every day.
see.
Mhm.
So do you think on both a US and even local basis plus on a more worldwide basis are as a in the AEC space, so to speak, do you think we're making good progress in terms of resilience in the face of earthquakes and hurricanes and floods and the various other natural disasters without getting into whether those are increasing due to climate change or whatever, but they happen and they have and they will. So do you think as an industry that we're making reasonable progress with respect to resilience?
Well, I think so. I mean, it's better. I mean, we still got a long way to go. Like if you pick
Hmm.
the, say, fire example, many houses do get burned down, but many didn't. And there are reasons for it, actually. There are actually
Uh-huh.
you can really build a fire, well, I don't say fireproof, but very close to a fireproof, fire resistive houses, without adding much cost. And that kind of a thought process never even exists now. It's there, obviously, right? So
Sure.
yeah, obviously, with a new house to get built, no one's going to use the wood shingles and anything like that. It's going to be fire resistive materials and the vegetation's right and so on. So yeah, things definitely progress, but that's after the fact. Before that, it's
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, just even pick LA, I mean, if the magnitude 7.5 earthquake happening close by, we're going to have some serious issues. We're
Oh,
going to
yeah.
have
Yep.
thousands of buildings collapse. Talking about, older constructions, especially
Yep.
the older concrete construction built prior to 1980. Those are really
Hmm.
dangerous things we're talking about. And
Yes.
also, if some serious fire issue here. And if that is combined with some kind of wind day or something like that, we will lose the whole LA basin.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it'd be much more massive than what we just saw in January. So fire risk, after the earthquake is a big deal in LA and in the Bay Area too, by the way.
yeah, yeah.
So are we ready for this? No, we're not ready for that.
Yeah, because
Absolutely not.
I've read that far and away the greatest damage in the San Francisco earthquake back in 1906 was the
Yeah,
fires rather than the actual ground motion.
yeah. Same thing. I mean,
Excuse-
especially California, houses are made of wood, so it's
Yeah.
different from like a place like a Turkey. Turkey made of concrete and bricks and stuff like that, so you don't see much of a fire issues there. But place
Hmm.
like California and Japan too, by the way, we
Yeah.
see some serious issues in the fire. So that's something that we're completely unprepared for. Just like you saw here, we were not prepared, right, for this fire happen here. But
Yes.
it's gonna be much more widespread issues we're gonna have. Um, but it's definitely the little things we can do make a huge difference though. Like each household can be ready for it. Make sure that the vegetation or some, in, just making things you can do little things like uh, automatic natural gas shut off
Right.
bulbs,
Yep.
stuff like that. May cost a couple $100, but it just makes a huge difference. Things like
Yeah.
that.
It's less than one insurance payment.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, earthquake side, I mean, it's definitely there was definitely advance was made and knowledge much more. But again, there's a lot of older stockwork buildings, right? That's the
Yes.
issues.
Yep.
And I think the problem is we don't know what to do about those things. Even the
Well,
hospitals,
yeah.
with
I mean, the upgrade of the evaluation upgrade of hospitals has been postponed so many times, and you can understand why. There's just a finite supply of funding for these projects, and they're very, very expensive. And
that's right.
we've been involved in materials testing and inspection on many, many, many hospitals that were complete rebuilds because they could not effectively economically upgrade to current standards. And so we've got to start from scratch. And that's just a spectacularly expensive proposition in an already strained industry. So it's easy to understand why, but then when the time comes, you're going to wish you had done that, you know?
So that is true. I mean, so bigger hospital groups or rich hospital per se, in the bigger
Yeah,
cities, they can do things like that. But
right.
in a rural area, no, they can't.
Exactly.
So they're left out right now. And supposedly they have to, confirm the seismic strength by 2030. I don't know how they're going to find the money to do things like that.
Yeah,
So,
I don't see it.
you
So,
know, I think we have to kind of whole change the attitude about this seismic approach. LA too, we have an ordinance to do seismic strengthening of all the concrete buildings, right, by what, next 25 years.
right.
It will be very, very difficult to actually happen because of all the building owners of this older concrete structures. It's not like they have a millions of dollars set aside to do things like
Yep,
that, you know?
exactly.
So I really don't think many will happen. It's not possible. Just not, just how gonna even do that? Has to be like a really affordable approach. California, we had this URM, the Unreinforced Masonry Buildings Ordinance.
Yep.
That worked
Uh-huh.
really beautifully, by the way. I mean, 90% compliance for past 20
Yes.
years. The reason is it was very affordable. Essentially, the providing the brick wall and the floor and the roof. When earthquake happens, brick wall tend to go outward and everything collapse, right? So we say, okay, let's just attach this to little epoxy anchors, over 10 years period. And that's
Hmm.
actually really cheap things too, especially when the tenants, in out and stuff like that, right? So it
Uh-huh.
was an
Yeah.
extremely successful program. So was the tuck under, the apartment with the parking, space.
Yeah, the
Many
soft
city
story
adapt.
buildings. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that adapted really well in both San Francisco and LA and all the places because it was very affordable. We just say, okay, don't worry about the building itself, just worry about this parking space you
Hmm.
know. So there's some commercial products to make it really cost effectively, seismically strengthening, stuff like that, right? So those are great successes we can do things like. So it has to be like affordable. I think
Yeah.
it's a very
Yeah.
important, you know. And for example, in Bangkok, so those high-rise buildings, if you say, okay, you have to meet this SC41 criteria or such and such, no one can afford doing. No one's gonna do that. No one
Yeah.
can afford it, right?
Yep.
But question is how much this investor can spend money on it. And we're actually looking at somewhere between maybe 2%, 3% of their market value of these things if they spend on that. Sounds
Hmm.
like they can actually enhance the market value of it. And maybe that's something affordable. At the same time, they're paying about 0.3% of value as a property tax each year.
Yeah.
And the government's looking at maybe they will give some tax break for 5 year time. That will generate the cash. And to spend this 2 to 3% of the market value to do seismic strengthening. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And but not only they don't lose the tax money per se because that creates the construction activities as taxable events, right?
True, true.
And same time, the international agencies there want to provide some liquidity to the market, a couple $1 million maybe, set up some certain commercial banks can borrow really cheaply. So that can also create the liquidity in the market to do things like that.
Uh-huh.
So the question is what you can do for 2% value of this high-rise buildings. Usually their value is about 50 to $100 million in Bangkok. So
Hmm.
2% means 2 mil, 3 mil. So it's not a huge amount of money per building. But that money, if you spend the money, you can definitely reduce the risk. You cannot eliminate the risk.
Right.
But let's say
Sure.
that the probability of collapse of that particular building, maybe, I don't know, say 15% or something. If you spend, like, say, $20 million, maybe you can reduce down to 5%. Never become zero, by
Yeah.
the way. At 20 million, they can afford that. But if they spend $2 million, maybe we can reduce from 15% to 11%. I don't know. Those are examples. But spending a little bit in the first couple $1 million actually makes a huge impact in a probability of collapse because you can really
Yeah.
pinpoint a certain major deficiency and particularly fix them. You know,
Yep.
so that kind of approach never been taken by anyone. Well, I guess that similar kind of approach, isn't it? If you think about it, soft story thing in
Yeah.
LA and the Bay Area or those out of plane things. So it wasn't a perfect job, but it's addressed this major deficiencies. So
Yeah,
it's more like
and we've seen the jackets around the columns supporting bridges
yeah,
and
yeah,
other things of that nature that are, as you correctly point out, obviously they don't make anything, nothing will make it earthquake proof, right? But you can resist a lot more. The likelihood of collapse is much smaller. So that, yeah, I agree. There are things that can be done economically, but it's not economical for as you point out, a rural hospital to demolish their facility and build a new one at this time. It's just
right.
not a thing that could happen.
So it's
So,
more like the approach should be like, okay, if the hospital can spend $1 million, spend $1 million to reduce risk.
yeah,
I think that kind of approach and engineers basically provide that what's the change in the probability of collapse. I
yeah,
think
yeah,
approach like that would be at the probably good approach. I think it's more like kind of a market-based engineering rather than performance-based engineering.
yeah.
And I
It
think
makes sense.
we can really change the profile of risk quite a bit.
That's great, and I appreciate it. I don't want to take up too much of your morning, and I know, I'm sure you've got many, many things on your plate, especially the both the proximity and time and proximity and space to the LA fires. So,
Yeah,
but I do want to thank you very, very much for the time you've spent with me today and with us, and I know that our audience will be very appreciative of the things you've brought to the table. I do want to point out that. Anyone can go to Miyamoto International, all one word.com, and learn a lot more about Dr. Miyamoto and his the activities that he has and the places where they're engaged and the things that they've done and are doing. And it's your firm is really, at least in my experience, Dr. Miyamoto, one of a kind, and it's very much appreciated the work that you do, and I'm sure around the world, people are very appreciative of the work that you and your firm have done. So, again, I want to thank you for being with us today.
well, thanks so much, Rob. This has been really interesting, and I'm really honored to you ask me those questions and be able to share what we've been doing. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Excellent. You bet. Have a great day, and
Yes.
hopefully we'll work together at some point.
Yeah, most definitely. Thank you,
All
Rob.
right. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye.